Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. Today we're going to review Arken VR, a game released on the Steam Store and the PlayStation Store January 16th, 2025 by developer Retrivious VR. And they've made some quality VR games in the past, including Shadow Legend VR and Mervils, a VR adventure. Arken normally retails for $39.99. I bought this game and I tested it out on the Meta Quest 3 using link cable on my RTX 3080. It took me approximately 14 hours to complete the game on normal difficulty. There is also a challenge wave mode that can extend playtime along with new game plus. Arken is a VR action adventure game set in the Biochasm, a terraformed fantasy world created by the Grand Arborist. It has full physics combat. You can use melee, ranged weapons, grenades, landmines, shields, and there are several weapon mods as well that change the characteristics of each weapon. And you can even customize the weapons to the colors that you want. Arken is a polished experience. It's a game that looks good in PC VR. It's a solid title that is fun to play, but falls short of greatness. So let's talk about Arken and what I liked and what I didn't like. First of all, Arken is running on the Unity engine. On my RTX 3080, I was getting mostly a steady 90 frames per second. I had most of the graphical settings on high, and I did have super sampling up to 1.2. And as far as lighting, shadows, textures, character animations, and 3D models, they all look very good here, technically speaking. And this game has received a lot of glowing reviews as far as the visuals, but I do have some criticisms. So as good as the game looked, unfortunately the game does feel like it's just a set of different arenas connected by loading screens. These arenas are actually not that huge, although there is a lot of verticality, which I did enjoy, and that's probably one of the best parts of this game. But these arenas are connected by these sliding doors, so they always feel much smaller due to that. And then you have the loading screens after these sliding doors open and you go to the next arena. And the major problem for me personally is that a lot of these arenas look alike, so there is not a whole lot of variety. A lot of the assets are reused, so you see similar looking character models, enemy models, buildings, trees, and I wish I was joking, but the big variety in this game is when they turn from the green tinted world to the red tinted world. And there is some backtracking in this game, so I was honestly confused sometimes whether I had already been there or not, because the different arenas look very similar to each other. Now, as far as sounds, I will say here the musical soundtrack is varied. Overall, I did enjoy it, especially during the boss fights. I felt the music did add to the tension. But this was also a mixed bag, because although sometimes the tension and the music all flowed well together, there were other times where it just didn't. It was like a calm moment and the music was picking up for no reason, or just didn't match the particular scene. The game action sounds and the ambient sounds though did sound good. There was good use here of spatial audio. There are some voiceovers in the game, although not a whole lot, but what was there was solid overall. Although some of the enemies would just repeat phrases, and that did get annoying. The story overall is pretty solid. I did enjoy it, and one of the best parts is the environmental storytelling, and so you can see what's happening to this world and why you're needing to complete the actions asked of you. But like I said, there really wasn't a whole lot of story, but what was there was pretty solid and kept me engaged and wanting to complete the story. Now, the combat is the core gameplay here, and I think the combat is really what limited Arken. Yes, the combat is solid. It does have a good physics system, but the combat was lacking depth for me personally. And I know this game has received a lot of praise for the combat, and the combat is solid, but for me it was a one-note combat. So what I mean by that is the same combat that I was doing early in the game was the same combat that I was doing at the end of the game. The game never evolved. So basically throughout the game you're going to be blocking attacks with your weapon and then counter attacking. Other than that, the most effective technique is to bum rush the enemy. In other words, to hit them while they're not looking and take them down as quickly as possible. That was basically the whole game for me, except for the parts that required you to use your range ranged weapons. There is little enemy variety in the game. The same enemies that you're fighting early on are really the same enemies that you're fighting towards the end of the game. The only difference is that the boss that you first fight is now used more often as part of the trash on the way to the next boss fight. There are only 3 boss fights in the game, and the first 2 are the exact same boss. The second boss is tougher because it takes a lot more to kill it. The only difference that I could tell was the colors, and the second boss was a lot tougher just because it had more HP and did more damage, but it was basically the same boss fight. Now, the last boss fight was more challenging and fun, but I was able to beat it on my second try just using ranged weapon instead of melee. And another thing that really kept me from enjoying the combat was that your ranged weapons initially are very weak, and it's not until you get some upgrades that they become useful at all. I will say that some of the modded upgrades that you can do to your weapons are very neat and cool and do change up the gameplay, and that was one of the best parts of the combat for me. I really enjoyed that. But again, you are limited in the modded upgrades that you can do. There's really not enough, at least not for a 14-hour game. So while Arken Age is a solid game and has received many glowing reviews, for me this is just a good game, a solid game, but not a great game due to the limitations the game has. There's not enough enemy variety, there's not enough boss fights. I mean, there's only 3 and 2 of them are almost exactly the same. The arenas are limited areas with loading screens in between them, and there's also some backtracking with enemies that respawn. Now, this game has more than just combat. It has a lot of exploration. Even though the arenas are limited areas, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of verticality. Your character has integrated climbing hooks, and this game does a good job of using that for you to explore the world. There's a lot of collectibles and goodies to find when you explore, so you're rewarded for exploration. And there's some platforming and puzzles as well. Now, I didn't really enjoy the puzzles because they were just too easy, but I did enjoy the platforming. The climbing I thought was excellent and well done. You're rewarded for being adventurous, so there'll be some jumping, some zip lines, and some really cool parts to this game where you're getting on these flying insects and going to parts unknown. My biggest complaint though is the quest, and sometimes it was very unclear on where you needed to go to complete them. So I just thought there was a little bit of aimless wandering around trying to figure out where you needed to go next without the appropriate markers. The underwater sections were just okay for me. I don't think they were as well thought out as the climbing sections, but the swimming sections were okay. I liked how you can either swim using the joystick or using immersive swimming, using your arms to propel yourself around underwater. A lot of the underwater sections just felt like a collectathon where you were just breaking a lot of containers and opening chests, and there just wasn't more to it than that, and that's why it felt kind of flat to me. Overall though, I do think that Arken Age is a good solid game. It's very polished. I only experienced a few bugs. The biggest one was where my climbing hook got stuck on a ledge and it just followed me and I couldn't get out. I had to quit the game and come back before it was fixed. So if I have to rate Arken Age, I would give it a very solid 7 out of 10. I think this is a very good game. It looks good. The combat is okay. There are some very cool things you can do in the combat between switching weapons and with a full physics system it has, including being able to dismember several body parts. But it just felt like a one-note combat to me where you're just basically either bum rushing the enemy or blocking and counter-attacking. There just simply wasn't enough enemy variety. It needed more boss fights, more interesting and challenging boss fights, and I think just needed a little bit more in the level design to stop it from feeling like different arenas that you're going to, and just more assets to differentiate the different looking places. So like I said, overall I would give this game a solid 7 out of 10. I do recommend it. I do think it's a solid game, but I just don't think it's a great game unlike a lot of other reviewers out there. Anyways, I'm Fast Lawyer. This has been my review for Arken Age. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the video.
Who goes there? Mm-hmm.